We're live.
Thank you. All right, I will call to order this meeting of the City of Salem Bond Oversight Committee for April 25th, 2024. President are Hoy,
Stapleton.
Karen,
Barney.
Courtright. I think that's it for members, and then we have many staff. I would just like to take a moment and acknowledge Duacy. She is here. She's an intern in my office, and today is her last day with us.
Aww.
She's been with us all semester, so thank you so much. She just finished a huge project. So, congratulations. And I think, how'd your final go yesterday?
It was good, actually. Really good.
Good.
Yay,
Awesome.
excellent.
So thank you for all of your work this last semester. It's been great to have you. Yeah. All right. Do we have any members of the public here or online? No. And I don't remember reading anything in our package. Okay, great. So we are on to action items. Right off the bat, property acquisition for fire stations. I'm going to turn it over to Alan Downing and Chief Whitlock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to pull up Google here on the screen just so we can be oriented. So there's, as you remember, there's two fire station projects in the bond. Replacement of Fire Station 8, which is located right now at Chemeketa Community College, and then a new station, which we're calling Fire Station 12. Right now in the budget, there's money for property acquisition, and then the money for the station, actual station construction is coming a little bit later. We had initially planned that Station 8 would be happening pretty soon, but with the current general fund situation, we're kind of pausing that until we have kind of solid direction there. But we do think it makes sense to lock up properties that make sense for this, future expansion or the replacement of Station 8. So we wanted to just kind of talk about that at high level with you all today, because we haven't authorized any negotiations or anything like that with council yet, but just kind of give you a sense of what we're looking at, where it's going, and make sure everybody feels like the direction is right. So Chief, jump in whenever you want, but I'll start with Station 8, which is located at Chemeketa, as I mentioned. And
Outside the city, for those
that's right. It's in Marion County, for those who aren't aware. It's right here, kind of on the southwest part of campus. See the training tower there, and the chief just helped me with that 2 minutes ago, so I'm not really that smart. And when we kind of zoom out and look for vacant properties, we're kind of looking more here to this north part of town to replace that station. And Chief, I don't know if you want to say anything else more about this service area or why we're kind of moving that direction.
Yeah, we're trying to get off of the campus because point out our speed limit on campus, we're required ways on campus, and so responding off of the campus and then jumping onto Lancaster is not another great response route for us north and south, and it's just as a slow response off that campus. And it's outside the city limits. So we're trying to get better coverage to the north, most part of the city, the Kale area, those sorts of areas that they're traditionally been impossible for us to drive from point A to point B, traffic considerations and the slow response off the campus. And so that extends the response times in those areas to those citizens.
And hundreds of new living units up there.
Oh yeah, a lot of development going on up there. So we are looking at several properties along. I think that's important near the Lancaster Portland interchange. Is that correct?
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
And then also along Kale.
Yeah. So there's a couple of properties that we're investigating there. The thought is we would build a fire station like we have currently built in 2007. That model of facility, we'd have to get back with the architect again, get some, make sure all the design is correct. That design fits into the neighborhoods fairly well. 4 bays, double deep. Ability to staff 2 engine companies there if you want to expand. So adding a company later kind of gives you some growth potential if you continue to develop out there. The other thing I would say is at this particular property, we are looking at putting an accessory apparatus storage building, which we would like to build prior to building the station, because we have hopefully trucks coming and a bunch of ambulances coming in about 12 months, and we don't want to park them outside. And so The thought, and we worked with Josh on this, the thought is that this building, while not part of the bond, we would use bond proceeds to build it, and we would repay that back with EMS funds down the road. And build the station when we build those. So it would be reimbursed by the EMS system. Because it's selected in future story.
Chief, I have a question for you.
Sure.
In the off chance that a casino is eventually built on that property, go to the upper left,
Yeah.
would that change anything about the design or the capacity of that station? And I acknowledge it's a very off chance, but I just want to consider that.
We actually approached the tribe about the property in front of Harbor Freight during this process and said, man, that's really an ideal spot for us. They were not willing to consider selling that to us because it's a future casino site or potentially a future casino site. So they don't want to tie any more of their land up until they figure out what their parking needs are, which I completely understand. But we did look, that was probably our primary, hey, this is a great spot, let's try to get this. We did look at about 8 or 9 other locations up and down Portland Road. Some of them were heavily forested with oak trees. I don't want to get into cutting down a bunch of oak trees to build a fire station. I think that would just, I just don't want to do that. So, and there were some other lots that were too small. And that's barring us doing eminent domain where we would go in and buy people's properties, and some of them were had that. So we're trying to find a vacant lot in our, our quarter-mile circle that's, ideal for us to improve our response times in that part of the community. These lots fit into that, and do have quite a bit of improvement. And with the development out there, that's going to be a busier station.
What I was trying to get at though is, would you need a bigger fire station if a casino were eventually built, or would this handle it?
No. We might put an additional truck there if the volume exploded, but as far as another facility, probably not.
Okay.
When we did our 20 station layout, if we had a station where we could put up, this was an area where we would have a station, but there wouldn't be an additional station here. So you had 40 stations.
Okay. And Josh, I have a question about using the bond funds for building it and then repaying. Will that limit our ability on, or will that limit our current budget on any of the projects that we're currently anticipating building?
No, because we have the station dollars set aside, so it'll just use those dollars allocated for fire stations, and those will be repaid when the EMS fund is fully up and running.
Okay. Mickey, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question, well, kind of a comment in regards to the casino. When I look at Northern Quest, Spokane area, where my son is a police officer, they have 2 paramedics on their staff, but in terms of ambulance service, and I'm thinking of us taking over EMS especially, they spend a lot of time there. And so I appreciate your questions, Mayor Boy, just because if it is built there, there may be some, it may be necessary. So if we're looking at a design from 2007, is that going to be big enough with the EMS responders associated with the fire department?
Yes, I think so. These station design that we built in 2007 were double house concept. So we currently have 4 stations that are double house concept. They're all single house right now. We may have 1 crew in the house. They're designed to have 2 crews.
Okay.
So we thought probably a 40-year growth kind of window for that. So so they weren't just a single house, just built with 3 bedrooms. They were built for 6 people or 8 people. We have room to grow. As far as the ambulance needs, we did an assessment when it looked like the casino was going to happen. And then political wind shifted a little bit, and it looks like it may not happen. We did an assessment on the valuation when we were working with the tribe about what kind of could we do a trade for putting a station there and these kind of things, and how much revenue would be associated with that, and what would the call volume be like. So when you put a large casino in, there is an increase in call volume, no doubt. Our EMS system is designed to be scalable. So if need be, if we had to add an ambulance to our EMS system and there's enough call volume to generate the transports from there, we can add an ambulance to our system to address call volume increases in certain areas of the city.
Okay.
So we have that flexibility.
what happens to existing Station 8, the training tower, the programs? Is the station, I don't know, is that station owned by the city or is it leased from? It's
It's owned
leased.
by the college.
Okay.
We have had a 60-year relationship with the college.
Yeah.
The last 60 years. And sometime, maybe 30 years ago, we sighted an engine out there with college students. The college program used to be at Chemeketa. It's out of Brooks now. So they've moved their fire science program out to Brooks. We still do training with them, but not as much as we used to because they were right in station with us. So that building is fully owned by the college. We have an exchange of services, if you will. Some of their students do ride-alongs with us in the city, 24-hour ride-alongs during their programs. They can learn more about the fire department in trade for us having that space out there and responding out of that station. So really, it's completely their property. So what they do with it, it's an older building. They may tear it down. They may do something. We don't even really train in the training tower anymore. It's so dilapidated. So.
Quick question on the 2007 design. How does that match up? Are there any changes in earthquake standards that affect the design?
So we would reevaluate all of that. Those stations were designed to the public safety standard for earthquake resistance, which is operation after an earthquake. So surviving through the earthquake and still being operational after the earthquake. So all of our fire stations meet that standard right now. Those were designed specifically that way. I think what we would do is we would go back, and Alan can jump in here. We would go back to the architect and say, hey, we're going to build some more stations. Is there anything that needs to be updated from 2007? There's always new standards, there's new building codes. We would make sure that we wouldn't build off the 2007 plan. It was just that that's the style. We did a lot of work on ergonomics in the station for quickly getting out the door, or past the walk past off doors work. Everything was engineered to get you quickly to the bays and on the fire truck. So that they are very functional for us and they're expandable. And so rather than spending, it's going to be tight to build 2 fire stations and buy 2 properties for 14 million. That's how much money we have. And construction costs are going up. So if we're delaying the construction, it's going to be more challenging. So we're trying to save money where we can. And these designs do work for us.
I'm just anxious about whether a new design might push the bunch heavy.
Yeah, there have been code updates since then that I think we'll be able to adapt and modify those designs too. But
Great. Anything else on fire stations?
oh yes, so there is one more site that we want to talk about, which is Station 12, so the news site. And the area that we're targeting there, forgive me while I
Down by Amazon, right?
yes,
Yeah.
is the Mill Creek Corporate Center area. Chief can talk about how this fits within the plans for providing the correct service response. But this Mill Creek Corporate Center area kind of fills the bill as far as their location needs. And there is vacant property there that we could look at. I think one of the things we wanted to talk about here with this group is that's in a urban renewal area, so it's meant to be tax increment.
It's not an urban renewal area.
Mill Creek Corporate Center.
No?
No.
It's an enterprise zone,
It's an enterprise.
It's both.
but I thought it was both.
Is that?
It is.
Oh, my mistake. Sorry.
So there wouldn't be tax increment growth that would come back to the city with it. We took a small piece of this for a station and built on it. There is quite a bit of other activity happening out there, and we would be talking about maybe an acre or so out of the whole thing. I know we've talked with Director Rutherford about this, and she expressed that issue, but I don't think was like, no, it's a complete no-fly zone.
No, there was just some concerns that there have been other businesses that have tried to locate out there and told, hey, you don't meet we don't want to sell the property yet. And so she was just concerned that politically it might be something we want to consider. We're talking about 1 acre lot out there. It's an ideal response location for us. DPS is just down the street, do training there. That's a handy thing, and it mirrors up with Station 10 on State Street for our response district that this area is underserved and growing like crazy. There's a lot of new residences and businesses going out here as well. A lot of interest is down the road. This gives us great access to all the main thoroughfares. And it's, again, we've been the same station that we built Station 8 here, same footprint. No extra vehicle storage on this site. We only need one building like that. We put that in Station 8. So this fits in with, this particular site here will, I think the last time I ran the numbers, we have a predictive software that you can run historical numbers to tell you what response times will improve by adding a station at this location. It's a 4.5% citywide improvement in response time, 4.5% citywide by having this station location.
Keith, I wonder though about this particular location, just in terms of access to like our major residential areas, because the road system out here is a little bit convoluted because of I-5 and Highway 22. You can't really get to where we have a lot of residents directly. And I know that there's a big development happening west of here, where the old, no, not north,
Go down
to the left.
along the curves there.
There's one there at Joseph, which is going to be similar to the Jory Apartments, but then over where Mill Creek Correctional Facility was is going to be a huge lot of housing units. I'm wondering if it doesn't make more sense to have something over there, a little bit closer to and not so much on the edge of the city.
So the problem we're trying to solve here is that between Station 10, which is on State Street, and all the way to this location. So there's a hole in there that has not great response time. So by putting it there, we have Station 9 over at Battle Creek. It's going to come the other direction, out Kugler.
Right.
And so Kugler is going to be probably their main travel path. It's going to be Kugler to get back to the south part of town. But we also have 9 and 7 that are on that end of town for coverage there.
But how do you get to those places from this particular place? Because there's not a lot of access across.
Kugler would be your main access probably. So we're talking about being just maybe in that area right there.
Right.
So you would go, Kugler would be, you go back down Lancaster or Kugler. You can jump on I-5 or Kugler if you need to go north or south. Mostly you go north there. And then pushing further down Kugler, of course, Station 9 and Station 7 are going to be taking those, both of those calls. Right. But as you know, as busy as we are, if one station is out, the next station is driving to that, into that station district. So it's a leapfrog effect kind of at points. You're going to have that no matter where you put it. If you put the station more toward I-5, you're going to end up with a hole in the Lancaster area, which is pretty populous. That Station 10 has a difficult recovery, and Station 6 has. We try to do a 4-minute travel time, so we build a 4-minute travel time around the stations to be able to address that. And you try to locate the stations as you build out. You're correct. You don't want to put them all on the border because then they're only responding really one direction in. But you also don't want to create pockets inside as you design your station layouts that have gaps that aren't covered because you're probably never going to put a station in between those two stations to cover that gap. So you always have that gap.
Do you have a map of where all of our existing ones are and where you're thinking about putting them with like the radius of that 4-minute response time? That would be really great to see, especially when we get closer to like, we're looking at this lot or this lot. I think it would be helpful for this committee.
I've got a build up to 20 stations.
I bet you do.
Yep.
So,
with all the travel times. And
so like when you have a option for a real estate proposal, we can come in and do an executive meeting with council.
Right.
And
Yes.
talk about the details.
Yes. I just wanted to give a high level.
Right.
We're looking at a couple
that
properties.
particular site is advantageous to us.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on fire station acquisition? Okay. We are on to pedestrian safety crossings. Julie Hanson.
Hello. This is checkers, okay. Can I have
You
the,
want the con?
make sure what?
It's sharing on the right screen.
Okay, so I wanted to go here first. How do I know if it's sharing or not?
The share bars over on the right.
Is there green around the?
Nope.
Oh,
So just stop sharing and reshare the correct.
now go to the green button on the Zoom. Yes, ma'am. And then go ahead and hit screen 1 up in the upper left. There we
Then
go.
click share.
Yeah, hit share.
Still don't see a green bar.
It's showing it
Oh,
down.
down there, okay. Okay, so, on the agenda, I know it lists the, grant application first, but I really want to talk first really about the, input that we received for all of the bond categories. So if you remember for the pedestrian bond categories, there were the safer crossings, the sidewalk infill, and the sidewalk replacement categories. So we were soliciting input from the public from basically the beginning of January until April 15th. Originally, it was going to go to March 31st, but we did have some technical glitches in March where somehow the city limits got messed up and people would try to put things in it. It would say they were outside the city when they weren't. So we got that fixed, and so we extended the deadline a little bit. We did get a lot of input. So this is our web page where we now changed it, just letting you know that it's closed. But you can still click on these to see what we've received. So in the category of sidewalk infill, we received, go to that. See if this will work. So am I now still sharing this one, you think? Okay, good. So this is all of the sidewalk projects that we received, all the dots. Sidewalk infill, there are 221 requests that were received.
What's the difference between blue and green?
I think blue is the sidewalk infill and green is the sidewalk replacement or repair. And for sidewalk replacement, we received 356 requests. Now that is in addition to the 1,800 that we already have in the books. And I will say that some people, you know, when they went in, they might be requesting something that we already had in the books. So there's the total number, we haven't quite landed on what that is. Also, sometimes when people put in their requests, they might say, you know, Center Street from here to here, you know, and it's like 5 blocks long. And so our sidewalk crew is going through and the sidewalk inspector is dividing that out. So actually the number of requests is going to seem to grow once we, you know, until we finally settle, because it's not really one request when you put 4 blocks in. So anyway, we are still working through those. On the crossings.
Are we also evaluating the level of need on those? Like somebody might say, oh, this needs to be replaced, but our inspector says, no, it really doesn't.
They're going out and they're inspecting it, and they're doing that their hazard assessment, which is a big driver in the scoring. And so, you know, once we get through that process, it's going to take us some time to get through that process, but we do continue to take, of course, sidewalk, you know, complaints, requests, or whatever. But for the purposes of the bond, we're trying to focus on the, you know, what we have now in the bucket, and so we can come up with recommendations to bring back to you guys. Yes.
So is the city making the determination if it's sidewalk infill or replacement, or is the public who's providing the input saying this is infill or replacement?
On the requests, people would identify what they were asking for. When we go in and look at the request, if they're obviously, you know, wrong or didn't understand the directions, I guess you could say, then we would change it and put it into the correct bucket. I mean, the infill, the idea is that, you know, there's no sidewalk there right now and we need a sidewalk. Replacement is the sidewalk is there, but it's tripping hazard or crappy or whatever.
What would you consider, like up in my area on Sunnyview where there are asphalt paths and
kind of sidewalk-ish, but not really. Is that a replacement or an infill?
I would probably call it a replacement, but we'll get down to arm wrestling as we get into choosing, which pot should this come out of? Because yes, there are other places where I don't even think the sidewalk crew, I don't think the GIS calls it a sidewalk if it's asphalt.
Right.
So yes, we will get into some arm wrestling about, where things go. But, we've collected this. I know the sidewalk inspector is working through. We have not started working through the analysis on the sidewalk infill because we are focusing on the pedestrian crossings. So pedestrian crossings,
And that we have a paper map in front of us on that one.
yes and no. Yes, you do, but.
It's here, it's not here. It's here, it's not here.
I get you. But I just wanted to show that, for context, this is all of the requests that have been received. So your paper map does not have all of that on there.
Can you remind us of there's the key on the left-hand side?
Yeah, and the key, for the purposes of right now, it's really mostly that we've received, so from January to April 15th, January 1st, we received 227 requests. And so we added that into previous requests. So the total number of requests that we've received is about 800. I will say about 200 of those really were somewhat irrelevant. They weren't actually requesting a pedestrian crossing. Maybe they were complaining about muffler noise on cars or whatever. There's some people just want a place to complain, right? Or provide input. So essentially there were 600 that were actually about crossings, and of those 600, about 318, probably about 320 were unique locations. So, we're talking about just over 300 unique locations that we then have gone through and scored. And so on those ones, even though it says they're not scored, that's what the orange color is, they are scored. We just haven't managed to get it married up in GIS yet. We have been doing a big push with consultant help to get them all scored. That just happened a week and a half ago or so.
Are we sharing those that are outside the city with the jurisdictions that have authority over those areas?
We definitely can. We changed the map, so I don't think you're able to put outside the city ones anymore. So the ones that were showing here were submitted before we got that. So that was the glitch we had, was that we had tried to put something in that said you won't be able to enter it. Well, suddenly it thought other parts weren't outside the city limit. So yes, and then there's some things that are just, we will be shading things gray, that there are other concerns, like if it's, the loud mufflers or whatever. We don't want to lose the fact that somebody provided input, but it's not, input that's pertinent to what we're trying to do right now. Yes.
So we have the yellow ones are already done. They're constructed on here.
Yes.
And the purple ones are funded. Are those going to be built in the next year, or is that in the next 5 years? Like, are they just in the CIP? Do you know?
It varies. This one actually is already built because we haven't gotten the coding changed. This one up here that's probably the Broadway at Hillcrest and Locust, yeah. And that's in design, or
We just did it.
we just bid it, and then this one up here, I think, is a couple of years. So it varies depending on them. I would say mostly they're in the CIP. That's when we would put them.
We have 8 to 10 in the next 3 years or so, right, Rick, that have funding in the budget now or in the CIP, and they're all moving towards construction.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so now I'll go over to this map if I can find it. Anybody remind me how I can get to full screen?
Hit the plus button right there in the middle top.
Or the expand. I just want to go so I can. You guys have this printed out, but online, if people are watching this, I just want the whole map to be shown. So what we did is once we got those all scored, we met with a group from engineering and planning to go through it, starting at the top and essentially figure out what would we do at each one of these locations, high level scoping. And we got down to about 33. So this map here shows 33 different locations. Sorry, I'm trying to think what I was going to say next. They are listed in priority order. However, there are a number of them that have the same score. So when you see something that says, like 19 A, B, C, D, E, that's because they all have the same score. So really, they're all the same. With the bond funds themselves, just the bond funds, this bucket has about 3.5 million. We estimate that we'd be able to deliver about 6 projects, maybe 7 if we were super lucky. So obviously this list of 33 is more than that. We have an opportunity to go out for a relatively large grant through the U.S. Federal DOT, Federal Highway Administration, the Safe Streets for All program. So that Safe Streets for All program is what we applied for last year, and we did receive the funding to do the 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in residential areas, as well as do a Vision Zero plan and do some education campaigns and things like that. So we received that grant last year. Well, they have another round of solicitation open right now. And so we are recommending that we apply for a bucket of these crossings using some of the bond funds as leverage, so that instead of just getting 5 or 6, we can get more like 20 if we get that bond. Sorry, if we get that grant. The grant application is due May 16th. We are planning to go to City Council May 13th, I think is the
10.
13th.
13.
Okay. And so we wanted to come here to talk to you to, see what, basically get your feedback on this. I will say that the grant program is quite competitive. And, the program started in 2022 and in 2022, 2023 were the first 2 years of this program. During that award cycle, they gave out 1,046 grants for planning or demonstration projects, and only 85 for implementation. So that's nationwide. They're anticipating giving out 50 implementation grants nationwide. And this would be an implementation grant. So, so it is competitive. They give extra points or extra consideration if your ask is less than $10 million of federal funds. And so what we are recommending is that we target our application to stay under 10 million of a federal ask. It's a 20% local match. And so that means that we would need to use up to 2.5 million of the bond funds to leverage that, essentially $10 million of federal funds.
So we would still have some money left over in the pot for just implementing some of these.
Separate ones. So, excuse me. So in order to try to, aim for that, okay, so engineering is right now frantically estimating all of these. And they're doing all of them, not just the top ones, but I don't have the results of that yet. Probably won't. Well, I won't when I have to write the staff report. But by the time we go to council, I will. So I'm not exactly sure how many we can fit into an ask to keep under that $10 million. The initial guess is that the ones shown in blue are ones that we would be able to include in the ask, and that's 20. Now, I will say that there's one that, the one circled in red, number 2, which is at Mission and 23rd, is on a state highway. And so that one still requires additional coordination with ODOT. It may not be the best choice for including in the grant application, even though it is a high priority.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the rest of the numbering scheme, what those mean?
So it's basically priority order, starting at 1, going down to 30D. The ones in blue, so the first 2 columns, 1 through 19B, are the ones that we were recommending be included in the application. And then the other ones are essentially the next tier that, continue to look for funding to deliver either through some of the remaining bond funds or other sources.
But I'm just like, you have a couple of 3s,
That's
several
because they had
5s.
the exact same score.
Okay.
So it's like a tie
So-
for third.
The scores
Okay.
ranged from, of the recommended projects, so I guess of the ones in blue, the scores ranged from a high of 71 out of 100 to a low of 60 out of 100. But 19 A, B, C, D, E all scored 60. The reason we are recommending A and B and not the other ones is because A and C, D, and E, all of those already have some level of crossing improvement in place, either curb extensions or a median island. And what they're asking for is more in addition. So that's why we were recommending A and B, even though they all score the same. The next tier down, so the ones in green, they have scores of either 57, 58, or 59. So they're all close. They're all good projects. It's just that using the scoring criteria that council approved, that's where we started.
Can you back up for 1 second? When you talked about the D and E, is that on all of these that they already have some sort of improvement at that location, or is it just
No, it's just in the 19. So as an example, you have 3A and B, okay?
Yes.
Those just happen to have the exact same score.
Right.
But I'm not saying that some have facilities and some don't. The A is just sort of, we thought about doing the numbered order, but then it would make it sound like 4 was lower than 3, but it's not. It's actually the same.
Okay.
It was just when we got to the 19s, we thought we could do more than 18 and keep it under, that $10 million federal ask. And so but we couldn't go all the way to 19E. So in order to figure out a way to split the 19s, since those all have that same score of 60, that was where we said, okay, we think we can afford to put 2 more in.
Okay.
And this is our reasoning for choosing those 2. Now, as we get those cost estimates, we may find that we can only fit 1 more in, or we may find that we can put 3 or 4 in, and that's what I don't know yet.
Did we do pedestrian counts at any of these, or?
No, that's not part of our criteria.
Okay.
Do we know if there's been any deaths at any of these crossings?
Crash data was one of our, was included in the factors for scoring.
That didn't quite answer my question.
Well, no, I mean,
Crashes.
you got more points if there was a fatality. You got some, I think, you got some points if there was a fatality. You got fewer points if there was an injury, and then 0 otherwise. And so, I can't tell you which ones got those points, but it fed into the overall. And you'll remember that we also used, 25% of the score was the equity score that we talked about. So you get more points related if you're in a high equity census tract than if you had a fatality. So if you had a fatality somewhere else, it just bring you up a little bit. If you're in a high equity area, it brings you up a lot. And so when you look at the distribution, you can see that, those blue ones are largely in northeast. There's a couple that, one way down on Fairview Industrial Drive, and then one closer into town. I have not done like any sort of statistical regression analysis or whatever you want to call it to see what, you know.
I'm curious about 13E, and only because it appears that it's at the end of my street. And it's on over there on the far right. And in 20 years of living there, I don't know if I've ever seen anybody trying to cross Sunnyview there, walking.
It's Sunnyview near Green Tree, and it's
Yeah.
actually a request from the transit district because they really want, there isn't a stop there now. They want to put a stop in.
On the north side,
I think they want to put a stop on the south side.
there is a stop on the south side.
Okay, there's a stop that they want to put in or they want to
Okay.
move close to there.
Okay.
And so they specifically requested this.
Okay.
They requested it, but it still scored the same as all the other projects, correct?
I mean, you know, so
Yeah.
anybody could put in requests
Right,
and they,
right.
they put in, you know. they
This is
looked-
right over by the elementary school.
Yeah, except that Sunnyview is the divider between Sweegle
Oh,
and
okay.
Cesar
So
Chavez.
kids aren't
So
crossing.
kids don't cross Sunnyview because kids on the north side go to Cesar Chavez, kids on the south side go to Sweegle. So,
Okay.
although, I mean, ultimately, you could, kids going to McKay, but they don't cross clear down there. They go, you know, where we already have crossings down closer to Hollywood.
So I guess we're looking just, you know, for input and, you know, I guess support if you are supportive of using some of the portion of the bond proceeds to leverage this grant application.
Yeah, I would just share, I think it's the best way to leverage our money, and we can get a lot more projects done for less money, so it makes sense. You know, and we're debating what's the right ask or what's the sweet spot to try and get the grant, and it's, I think where Julie landed was with that, getting extra points for being under 10 million seemed to be the right spot, so.
For sure. I think it's great. Everybody good?
Yeah.
I'm curious, so if we don't get the grant, where are we at with projects? How far do you get down the list?
6 of them.
Or is that for another day? to
No,
talk
that's,
about
that's
that?
what we're talking about is probably we would get to, you know, about 6.
So the top 6.
Right, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, well,
5B.
it would split the 5 category.
Okay.
So, because you have a 5A through 5E, so you get 2 of those.
But it would include number 2, right? Because you would be taking out the risk of that
It would be
jeopardizing the grant.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So number 2 would likely go into that. And I think that if we take number 2 out of the grant, we will definitely would be looking at number 2 as one that remaining, you know, approximately $1 million could support that.
Are there potentially other funds that could be applied to too? Like state, is there an ODOT grant or?
I mean, there's, you know, we're always looking for grants.
Yeah.
And it is unusual, you know, I mean, we could just say, no, we don't want to do anything on the state facility.
Right.
That would be another, you know, decision point.
Sure.
Here, you know, I think our reasoning is that it's, while yes, it is a state highway, it is our people that are trying to get across it.
For sure.
And so, you know, what can we do to support that?
And it's right near our navigation center, which I think is really important to help with pedestrian crossing for sure.
Julie, did you mention when the federal decision on awards is expected?
You know, I can't find an exact date on there, but I believe it would be, I'm assuming by the end of the summer. It's a rather odd program where they have 3 different application deadlines. One of them is in late August, but the only one you can apply for implementation is this one in May. They did just change the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. They just amended it so you could only apply for one time. Because we had talked about the potential of going for a second one if we didn't get the first one.
The last one we applied in, well, I don't know when we actually applied. I know I went to DC in September to lobby for it. And then we heard the news in December. So that was kind of the time frame.
I think
that
we
was the
applied
second round.
probably in June-ish.
Sounds right.
or I don't remember.
And we were in round 2. We didn't get in round 1, I think.
I
That
don't
was,
remember. So,
So without the grant, Julie, where we are in the process was we would take these rankings, do our estimates, and then say, okay, here's what we think the list is.
and come back to
And
this
then
committee.
take that to this committee and also out to the public, right?
Right,
and
so
then-
this committee first, and then we would go out to the.
And we left ourselves some leeway for exactly things like project number 2, like maybe we want to elevate that, or maybe we don't because of the complications of working in state right away. So, it might not follow the rankings exactly. Here, we're taking a pause to see what happens with the grant. And then if we don't get it, I think we come back to that process, right?
Right, so I would, this is a big push to get this grant application in, and once we get that submitted, we can shift some of our attention to the sidewalk infill, to moving that along, while we wait to hear about this grant.
Let me ask you a question. For instance, on 5C, which it looks like it's at 17th and Madison,
Yes,
that is not technically a crossing, it's curb extension, but we're kind of lumping that all together then. And I'm wondering about the residents' expectations about crossing versus curb extension. I mean, I know people in the know that a curb extension is safer for pedestrians, but I'm wondering if that is then, is it going to be received the same way by the community?
when we talk to people, we talk about the different kinds of treatments that are involved in, crossing improvements. Curb extensions is one of them. So, somebody might have some idea. I would think that we would want to, as part of that with the bond program, that part of that outreach, when we have a package, we need to go out and make sure they all know. We don't have time to do that with this grant application. So, but yeah, we would be looking at curb extensions, and 17th Street is planned to have bike lanes.
Right.
So it doesn't have them today. So the curb extensions really need to go into Madison, not into 17th. And it's an all-way stop. And
That's
so,
my concern
Right.
too, because people are already stopping at 5C, but at like 10A, that's at 5th and Market, that's crazy. There's already a
Yes.
crossing there. There has been a death there. That is a school, safe routes to school area. There is a bus stop there. So it's interesting to me to see the scoring that a 5C would land higher than the 10A on those two. So it's just interesting to see how the scoring works out.
I know it is. And
Maybe only by 1 point though.
right, because
Sure.
because these are all very
It's the next
close.
rung down.
Yeah.
Right.
And are we giving any feedback to the people who proposed these? Are we contacting them again saying, hey, congratulations, your idea made it to the top 10? Or are we doing that at all?
So on the safer crossings, it's a little bit odd because, we weren't always requiring people to put in contact information when they made the request, so we may not know.
Okay.
I would say with the bond program, so, once again, when we get to coming back with a package that we're recommending, that can be part of our public outreach, is we can pull the contact information out, either just for the ones that are being selected, or we can pull it out for everybody and say, thank you for your submissions last winter. This is where we are in the process. These are what's being recommended, without necessarily, saying you're a winner, you're a loser.
Right, no. But I think it's good for people to hear what happened to their idea. Like
Yeah.
it didn't just go to some black hole. It was
We
considered.
did ask for contact information with this. I will say that we did all, in some cases, we asked, we did not require an email or.
Okay.
I remember, so sometimes it's a phone number, and I don't see us actually phone calling
No,
everybody.
no.
So, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anything else on that one?
That sound like a weird spam call.
Congratulations.
This is Julie Hanson from the city of Salem. We want to
Come see
congratulate
your
you.
curb.
Okay, anything else on pedestrian safety crossings? Okay, sounds like no. I'm gonna go then to Union Street Bikeway. Alan, you are the booth today.
Today and every day. All right, so before we dive into the pictures a little bit, I guess I just want to set this one up. So we've talked about this project a couple of times here, with the bond project extending on to the project that was already completed on Union Street. And we've been working on a concept design. I'm going to zoom. And as we've talked through that, there's been an alternative discussed. And I know we talked about it here kind of very vaguely, and so we can share a little more details now about that alternative and what its pluses and minuses are. And I think we just wanted to talk through it in a little more detail before we continue charging on with design. And unfortunately, this is not gonna, oh, maybe if I do this, that shows it's pretty good. So just as a reminder, we are connecting onto the existing project that we just finished at Summer Street and trying to provide a similar treatment with buffered bike lanes all the way around the corner to Marion and 12th. And then this purple here is the promenade. And we talked about this a little bit last time, but the downside of this design is, you know, we've worked through and tried to balance everything as best we can, but the east to southbound bikes eventually jump up onto the sidewalk here because we run out of room in the street. And then if they want to get over to the promenade, they're going to have to cross at the signal. So that's not the most ideal way for this transition to happen. So the alternate concept that came up is a sketch. I'm going to shift it over to the sharing side. And this is rough.
I don't think that, does that show that?
It does.
It's just sharing that screen, so I think we should be good. So bear with me as I talk through this here. You can kind of see the label. I flipped it so it's in the same orientation. But the idea would be, instead of bike lanes on both sides, to take the lane from Union Street that's along the outside here and make it bikes and peds only. And then use the other lane that's there as a vehicle lane for the northbound to westbound traffic. And then no bike lane on this side, so you just have vehicle lane for the eastbound to southbound traffic. The benefit of that is when you get around the corner here, it's much easier to transition onto the promenade,
Right.
or vice versa for the bicyclists and the pedestrians for that matter. So that's the concept that's out there. The drawback that we have right now is we've proceeded with the other design to the point where we're about ready to receive 30% drawings, and we're moving forward towards 27 construction. Am I remembering that right? I'm gonna switch back.
I see a little note there, it's called bus priority. That's a whole new element in this
That's
conversation.
outside the scope of this project.
Thank you. Okay, I'm like, wow, that's a new concept that we don't talk about a lot.
So we're based on the meeting we had a couple months ago, we've moved ahead, so we are to that point where we're at 30%. If we want to investigate this concept, which does have some advantages that I pointed out, we would have the downside of essentially stopping and at least pausing our design efforts to now investigate this option and flesh it out kind of to the same level that we have taken the initial design. That's going to cost us some extra money and some extra time.
How much?
I don't have a full estimate for you, but I think it's probably in the, less than 100, but more than 25 or 30 range to flesh that out and really look at the designs. And I can tell you some of the issues that are going to be critical to look at here. So one is, if you picture what a normal street is built like, it's got a crown on it, right, for drainage. So if this, go back to the picture.
Please don't tell me we're gonna call 12th Street a normal street.
No, we won't.
Okay, good.
But it does have a crown on it, right?
It's got something.
And so if pedestrians are going to use this lane, most of that lane is going to be at a cross slope that's greater than what's allowable under ADA standards, or for walkers or wheelchair users. For bikes, it's not that big of a deal because they ride on the side of bike lanes all the time with a similar cross slope. But for the pedestrian use, it's something that we would likely have to deal with and try to transition that grade out. And that's where it gets really difficult, because there's value in keeping the existing curbs where they are. So if you remember what that street looks like, sorry for switching back and forth all the time. There's this median out here that's got a curb around it. And that's what sets where your pavement ties in and what the slopes are of the pavement. So if we need to change the pavement on one side, then we have to change the slope to tie back into that fixed point. And that's where it gets difficult, making sure the drainage works, making sure that we aren't, because we start taking out curbs, then the expense grows. So that's one of the biggest, I think, technical, and there's probably a solution there that could work. It's just how much does it cost and what are all the details? Go ahead.
If we made that multi-use path, or that idea of both of them on the other side, and just made it, what do you call it when it's bike lanes going to both?
Two-way bike.
A two-way,
I don't know.
I know
what
there's
you
a
call it.
different term that I'm thinking of, but anyway,
Cycle track?
sure.
Well, that's what we're
Um,
calling it out on McGilchrist.
It's just a two-way.
Okay,
Bike
so
lane.
if we just made that a two-way bikeway and did not encourage people walking, would that solve some of the problem?
It could, we wouldn't have to worry about the grades at that point. There is an existing sidewalk. It's kind of
Mhm.
difficult to see on this drawing here.
It's a very nice sidewalk.
It's a very
I
nice
walk it all the
sidewalk.
time.
Yeah, that's right. It's not currently on city right away, so that's another issue of this project, is we actually don't own that property, so that's something we've gotta square away.
I'm not sure why that's important here.
It's a potential cost issue that we have to deal with to make sure that we have all the right of way that we should have.
For the bike lane on that side to go up and on? Is that where the cost you're talking about?
No, it's actually for all of this existing sidewalk. Most of it is not on our.
But if we're not gonna disturb it, why do we care?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that could be
I don't wanna
something we
buy it.
could
So
postpone.
Would the property owner remove it for some reason?
State?
It's
it's the state.
State.
It's not that we don't care, but it's also not that's not the only issue with the right of way out here. So some of the actual Union Street is under different ownership. We don't own the median. So there's a lot of stuff here that if we're gonna do this work, we need to untangle. And I guess the approach we were taking was we should fix it all and not leave problems for our I would say predecessors, but it's not that. It's really successors. Thank you.
What if we went with the less noble solution and just got the work done that we're trying to get done? I mean,
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'm definitely open to it. I think because we're going to be dealing with the state either way, we may not have that luxury.
Would that curb, Alan, on the west side, the transition to the south, would that move at all under this other option, or is it just stay in place? If we're not gonna have a bike lane, so we
Which
go
curve
back,
are we talking about?
yeah, the west side of 12, that transition. So
This one here.
that one.
Yeah.
Do we even have to touch that curve under that other proposal?
I don't think so.
That's what I
It
heard.
would just be really
I
wide.
think we're trying not to touch the curbs in either case.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, that could just be, it just continues to remain.
Where we're
What it
making
is.
some modifications is at the intersections,
Mhm.
and that's what kind of starts to pull at the loose thread in the sweater. The other challenges that we would have to figure out answers to. So bike traffic, if it's going to be diverted to this side, we need a bike signal here that would essentially allow that traffic to cross.
Right. And in the original proposal for this plan, that
was gonna
signal
be
was
over
at
here.
Summer.
Yeah.
So
So it's just basically moving it a
just
block,
moving it one block.
or do you need two?
I think the other issue you have, which is with these medium trees, we'd like to lose some of those with the other concept.
Potentially, yes. Although, like I said, we're trying to keep curbs where they are so that, because we move that curb, we're disturbing the trees, right? It's really localized to right in this area.
Well, the really weird thing about this little section of street is that the only real purpose it serves is access to that one parking lot, I think. If there's,
And there's
because
actually
otherwise,
other
you're
paths.
gonna keep heading south on Capitol and you're gonna take a left on Center. There's no reason to go around that, to take a left on the Union and come around that curve if you're driving. There's no point.
Other than to mitigate traffic backing up. I mean, does that make sense?
No.
Like, say if we cut it off and you didn't allow traffic from 12th Street to continue around the curve.
Well, northbound is a little different story.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I was
Yeah,
talking about
northbound is a little bit different story. I mean, there is reason, because it's easier and you have to take a right lane.
You were talking about southbound.
But southbound, there's no reason to go.
way from Capitol. You go south.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
Capitol.
Well, other than that,
I mean, you
Yeah,
can-
yeah, figure it out.
It's more like,
Is that a one-way there?
it's, yes, it is.
Oh,
It's-
okay.
It's more like traffic coming this way, right? than-
Yeah, and there is traffic that does.
Yeah, it is. If you live out
You're
south.
right.
and you
You're
wanna
just
avoid
talking
downtown.
Thank you. Okay, I'm like, I'm sure. Sure, I have a good
In
point.
your proposed do you need the west side of 12th Union because you don't have enough right of way to fit the two-way bike and the two-way travel lane?
We were just going with one travel lane.
Well, can you pull that back up?
Sure.
Is that why we're talking about pulling on the thread?
No, the pulling on the threads is actually more to do with this intersection work that's gonna happen regardless either way. And that's where we get into the state right away.
So the concern is causing a disruption opens up a whole conversation that could lead to underlying property ownership question.
Right.
How long will it take to evaluate this? 3 months?
That sounds about right.
About
Yeah.
right. I mean, if we're gonna do this, it's a one-time to do it. We're either gonna take 3 months and look at it, or it's gonna go in as proposed, and that's just how it's always gonna be. So I think if there's interest in doing it,
I do want to say that that 3 months probably costs us one construction season because we're that far down the path in the schedule here.
So, because this is kind of my thing, have been really wrestling with this because I really want this project done. But how do I like balance picking at it and pushing it and trying to get it perfect over getting it done? And talking with community members and folks, you know, this Union Street really can be the backbone between the east-west connection for the whole city. And so is it worth spending the time to see if we can get a really smooth connection onto the promenade? Might be worth that year that we're losing for construction. I don't know, and that's why we brought it here. I talked to Chris at length about this, just really wrestling with how hard do I push for this, and not knowing the balance between pushing and getting it done. And so hence why we're here and talking about it.
Well, and I think that this, we've been touting this connector, like this is gonna connect all the way from Marine Drive
Mhm.
across the Union Street Bridge to our Union Street Bikeway, and we've been saying all along, and it connects it to the 12th Street Promenade, and it creates a system.
Mhm.
In my way of looking at it, the current proposed solution does not do that. I mean, can you get there? Sure, but it's not a system. It's not a connected system. It's
Disjointed a little bit.
yeah. So in my mind, it's worth waiting. It's worth doing it right because this is a once a generation shot to create a system, a connected system of bike lanes and bike connectors in the city. So for me, it's worth it.
I think if it wasn't the main east-west connector, I'd be a little bit more able to like do something disjointed a little bit. But because it is that main piece, I kind of feel like it's worth it.
I do too.
Well, I'd agree with that. I mean, the meeting we had, the Public Works had with the bike community, one of the key objections is a lack of continuity in important routes. And those breaks in the link really affect people's willingness to use the facilities. So very important, especially here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're coming from West Salem, you're coming across the Union Street Bikeway, you come around the corner, you have to stop, you have to get off your bike, you have to push the signal, wait for the crosswalk, walk your bike across, get over, walk across the tracks, get onto the promenade. I mean, that's not a connected bike system.
Or if you're like me, be impatient and do something dumb.
Or which is what most people will do. They'll choose something awful.
I guess what I want to say, definitely hear the input. What concerns me is we're gonna spend this 3 months. We're gonna go down that path. We're gonna find. I mean, there's little doubt in my mind we're gonna find then that we don't have the budget for the project, and so we're gonna have to then talk about decisions about how do we find the money for it. So I guess I just want folks. I don't know the scale of that number, but I just want folks to be ready for that conversation.
Do you think an alternate is more expensive than this proposal?
Yes.
What makes it more expensive in general?
In general, I think we've got more signal modifications. And I guess if we can avoid the ADA, that may mitigate.
In my mind, this should be about the bike connectivity. I don't see this as a walking path. We have a perfectly good sidewalk on the other side of the street.
yeah, I think the other thing is like the whole concept of trying to clean all that stuff with the public state. That may be something we don't have to deal with if we stay on the other side of the street. So we could maybe put some of that off. And I know there's a desire
you're
to
right.
to clean it all up and make it right, but
Hope you're right.
it's been that way for as long as the street has been there. So, I mean, I think we should at least explore that maybe as an option.
In exploring it, would you also explore that ADA issue? Because we've said that before in private business, right? I don't see this as an ADA issue, but a lot of things end up being ADA issues. And if that,
So I wonder what you're doing with ADA on this concept, because it just looks to me like there's just a bike lane,
There is no sidewalk on this side.
right? So what would be the difference with the new concept where that bike lane is wider?
It wouldn't as long as it's not meant for pedestrians.
so if you didn't add a sidewalk.
Right.
Or if you just didn't call it
You
a
just,
pedestrian.
it's just
Right.
bike zone.
I forgot there is
Bike lane.
not one there.
Yeah.
The,
there's
the
not one.
original label was
A multi-
multi-use, so what we're really saying
Cycle
is
path.
it's a
Cycle
cycle,
way.
it's a
Two-way.
cycle way.
Two-way bike.
Can I add one thing on that, Brian?
Yeah.
One thing to take note of is if we make that into two-way cycle track, when we get down to the railroad, there's gonna be some challenges there getting them across the tracks, because there's not any activation down there. Even taking the bicyclists up onto the sidewalk allows them to use the activation to get across the tracks. And if they're on the right-hand side, there's no activation there. There's really no staging area for them at that spot too. So that's gonna be the very, very tricky spot when we get to that point.
And not to use a bad pun, but I love them, so that's the third rail of this project, because if we make a modification to the,
You will not allow that.
if we make a modification to that railroad crossing, then that comes with all kinds of other implications.
Say no to your idea just because of that.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping for.
Well, why don't we just create another railroad crossing up above there? Okay, that's a joke, because we know that that'll never happen, because the railroad is more powerful than everybody. Okay, other thoughts? Do other committee members have thoughts?
I'm not as much of a bike rider, so it's hard for me to imagine. I'm looking at it thinking, okay, West Salem going east. How come you don't cross it summer instead?
Because that's our Union Street.
Yeah, I can back up.
It's a
So we actually have
it's a whole biking infrastructure all along Union
Yeah.
Street.
we have
No,
a
I
lot of-
know, but I was just thinking, instead of all the other stuff going on at Capitol, if you're gonna be crossing the street, the new idea. Just seemed to make sense to do it beforehand, before you get into. Do it a block the track. Do it a block the road. I was just thinking about it.
In
Oh,
the
so
long,
like-
in the long view, we hope to have that third lane of Capitol Street turn into a bike lane.
Mhm.
We have the project for that, so a bike signal at Capitol would make sense so that folks could either cross over to Union and get in that cycle track on the top side, or to go down Capitol Street. Two different
I don't think I
options.
wanna be in either on a bike right now, anyway.
I ride this all the time.
No, I really don't have much input, because I.
Okay.
No.
My take is that you do, to Virginia's point, you do want a whole system, right? But now I'm wrestling with the concern of, okay, so if we wait that extra 3 months to figure out whether we can do the system, and we find out that we can't, and you're kind of saying you kind of feel like that may not work, we end up do we end up getting less than what we have here?
Hmm.
We end up in the danger of having to come back and modify the existing plan
Because of
and then
costs.
because of cost and end up with something less than what we've got here. So that's
Yeah.
that's where I'm wrestling. That's what I'm
Okay.
wrestling with.
And I think that's what
That makes sense.
I was trying to say. I think we can make almost anything work, right? These are challenges that can be solved. It just takes money. And so that's the decision that has to be made, is are we gonna allocate that money?
Yeah.
And you're right, if we lose a construction season, then our money is gonna buy less. So if we come back to this, right now, the project is, tracking on time and on budget. But that's
I want to move past this very soon, because we only have 20 minutes left and we have several agenda items. So I would like to now make a decision and move on.
You say you would like to make a decision?
I would like to make a decision and move on. Yeah, like what's our pleasure?
I defer to you all. Kind of like the second idea, that there are complications with anything.
So right now we have 2.5 to 0, but where are you?
I think we need to explore this option. Again, the continuity question is huge to make these
Right.
things work.
Makes sense.
Okay,
We'll chase it down as fast as we can.
there you go.
That's the key probably.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Good conversation. These are not easy when it gets to some of these things. Okay, we are now on to project updates with transportation. McGilchrist construction update. Alan.
Yeah, I can make these quick. So McGilchrist construction continues. The intersection at 22nd is under full closure right now through July 1st. That work is going well. And then once that work is complete, the closure will move a little bit towards the west, towards 12th Street, or we're replacing a culvert. So we'll be able to open up some traffic back through that intersection on the other side of the culvert to improve access again. Right now, we're still on time for construction to wrap up towards the end of the year. And we're still on budget as well. We've had a few changes that we're absorbing, but still got contingency left in the project to deal with those. So that's looking good. Phases 2 and 3 are going ahead with design. Phase 2, we hope to bid next year. And then phase 3 follows that. And that phase 3 is the tricky one with more culvert work, the railroad crossing, and more signal stuff. So that's why that one's last.
Well, that all sounds positive so far. Any questions? All right, Marine Drive.
Marine Drive, I think the main thing just wanted to share, and we've talked about it before here, moving forward with both water line construction, which is not bond funded, but there needs to be a water line under Marine Drive, and then a small segment of Marine Drive to go with the Applegate Veterans Housing Project. That deferral call up is coming to council at one of the meetings in May, where we'll require the developer to do their part of that improvement that was deferred previously. They're on board with that and know that's coming. So that all gears us up to do those construction improvements this summer along with their development. We sent out notice, and I think Mary, you were probably copied, and Councilor Barney, maybe you were too, because I think that's your order. Maybe it's yours. Okay, sorry. So we sent out notice to a large group of residents because of the survey activities and everything that's going on with the larger corridor project. And we have started to hear some folks chime in asking what's the purpose of the project, concern about impacts to natural areas and things like that. So we are planning an open house later this summer to just pull everybody together and start talking about the project.
When you
address
have
some
all
of
of those
those
talking points together, it would be helpful if you would share them with us, because I know I'm getting the same feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could we be invited to the open house?
Absolutely. Thank you. I was just gonna say, we'll make sure you know what it is.
What's another night of our lives?
Yes.
This is a little off, but did the legislature give some of the infrastructure money for a portion of something near this project?
Applegate project, they
Yeah.
did veterans housing, and they did provide money for that, I believe.
But the housing part, not the infrastructure
Not
part.
I thought there was something in the infrastructure package that went for that. Am I misremembering or
I'm
misunderstanding?
not sure.
It's very close to what that referral amount would be. I think they authorized about 300,000.
It's a $300,000 gift, and it's labeled City of Salem, but it is going to Applegate. And we've actually just had correspondence today with Applegate about how that works. So it could very well be that figure. It sounded familiar. I was just
Yeah,
gonna ask Josh about
sounds
the
right.
number. It sounds very, very familiar.
Somehow we got looped in this pass through to this project weekend. Great. Okay, anything else on Marine Drive? All right, pavement R&R. We're not gonna do any of that, or we don't have any needs really.
Yeah. So wanted to close the loop on the 2024 R&R project. And I think Josh sent you all an email relative to the council action that happened on Monday night. That feels like a long time.
It was a long
It
time
was a
ago.
really long time ago. Eons.
And I guess just wanted to close the loop a little bit on the numbers there, and we can provide more breakdown as necessary. But just a reminder, so the overall project budget there was $3 million for the 2 segments that we're doing, which this is total project cost for Commercial Street and the block on Liberty right out here. And then we added not quite 600,000 for the sidewalk improvements that were authorized out of the transportation buckets that we were just discussing before. Some early work there, mostly for sidewalks along Liberty and a little bit along commercial. So total project budget was just under 3.6 million. As we worked through the design and analyzed the budget of that, the construction estimate alone, so just the cost of the contract, was trending towards about 3.6 million before we went out for bid. And the good news was, so we were expecting a much worse ask than what we had. The good news was those bids came in around 2.7 million. So that was good, but we were still about 660 was the amount of premium that was authorized. That's what we needed to make the project have enough to go forward. And that includes a 10% contingency on the construction amount. We always try to have a little bit in reserve for whatever issues we discover during construction that might need a change order or something like that.
Is this project right out here going to actually fix that drop as you come off the bridge? The little, like there's a, I don't know how many inch drop, like you
Yeah.
fall in a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's gonna fix that, cool.
So if I heard you right, you came to council with 3 point something ask, and the bid was 2 point something ask? Yeah, I see it in head.
We came to council asking for 660,000,
600.
and that's the additional we needed from the 3.6 total project to 4.2 to fund.
And then we have contingency on top of that. What happens
Inside of that.
inside that?
Yeah.
What happens when we do these two projects and they go seamlessly and you have that contingency at the end? They're laughing. We can hope. What happens to that contingency? Does it come back to this group? Do we hear about that?
Yes,
I've seen headlines.
that's, and Brian knows this more than me because he lived it back with the 2008
Mhm.
bond, but those savings came back to the steering committee and we said this money's available, and then decisions were made about how to use it. In that case, they were able to do a lot. We were able to do a lot more projects.
And we're
because of-
still
Yeah.
spending $2,008.
How long do you hold that contingency before it's released back into, whatever the pool here?
My ideal answer is wait till the contract's closed out just to make sure that we're clear of that. So, and that should be by, end of the year. After
Yeah.
everything goes seamlessly.
In the OA
Seamlessly.
fund, we kind of held it, almost halfway through the
So many.
program. And so that just went back into what we call it unspecified to be contingency for the next project. And what happened was it just kept building and building. And we had a lot of money.
That's why I
to do
asked, so that's why I asked, because
Right.
you could hold the contingency for a number of reasons for quite some time.
We're still early in the program. I think with the Minto bids and and this bid, even though it was more than we had budget for, I'm optimistic that I think costs have maybe started leveling off. But I think what we're seeing is all of our estimates for escalation and everything else, we've essentially chewed through. So it's depending on what happens in the coming years will really tell the story.
Anything else on pavement R&R?
I just want to pursue this. The cost over my figure is about 20%. That's how much more this is going to cost than what we originally estimated. And so just projecting that cuts the budget for the rest of the pavement R&R projects. That's something I'm concerned about. I'd like to see more of the details of, or hear more about what were the costs that we underestimated. Why did these projects, and how might it affect the other projects that we're dealing with? And looking back, I think my recollection is on McGilchrist, some of the costs actually came in lower than what we had estimated. So I'm just curious to see if we've got any trends or ideas about how what we've just experienced on this project affects us going forward.
Sure. Yeah. We can bring back more details for sure, kind of breaking down.
And I think we're gonna tee up a larger discussion about what you wanna do with the whole program. In your example, if everything was over 20%, how you wanna handle that and what that looks like over the next 8 years. But I know we won't have time for that today.
Yeah, I want the contingency to cover that.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to parks. Aaron, you are up. Minto Brown parking lot.
Yeah, I just have a brief update, just to keep you guys abreast of what's going on out there. We had our pre-con with the contractor a week ago. They're anticipating starting construction May 20th. That's good news. Of course, it's all weather dependent. If we have a wet June, that could delay things. Right now, their forecasting, or their schedule they have provided us shows them starting lot 2 on the 20th and then being complete with lot 3 by the end of July.
When we're doing the dog park parking lot, will we be closing the dog park or is it just the parking lot?
Just a parking lot.
So they'll still be able to access, just have to walk a little farther.
Yes, so we're gonna provide, we're putting up some reader boards in advance of the project for the construction, to let people know that there's gonna be some construction activity to be aware of. Lot 3 would be open, and we're also gonna be providing a driveway access to the overflow lot next to lot 3 that we typically only use during large events.
Yeah.
We're just gonna clear it up for the summer.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else?
One more thing on that. Earlier we provided some updates. We removed some trees as part of this project.
Yeah.
Come to find out, there was like 2 or 3 that were not removed, that need to be removed still. So city staff will be going out and putting notices on those trees. They just were into the area that it's going to be impacted. So we'll take care of those before May 20th.
Okay.
What's the plan for the logs along the north side of the entrance?
Aaron, I can,
It
I
is.
can take that.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah,
Great.
those logs are likely to stay for the summer, to help, just discourage people from parking in that shoulder where their parking is not allowed and having dogs run across the roadway. Those are invested with the bronze birch borer, so also we don't want to remove that material from the park. So when we remove it from the shoulder, we'll keep it in the park somewhere, we use it as a habitat.
Anything else on Minto parking lot? Okay. Riverfront Playground Equipment Grant. Rob, you are up. Tell us about your moat.
I want to be a kid.
Yeah. It's not really a moat. It's not really water.
All right, so we are just crafting a kind of a broader project than what was originally thought of for the bond funds for the replacement of the playground equipment at Riverfront Park. We're calling it the Playground and Pathways Project. Some of the objectives up there, we're trying to really transform and revitalize that part of the park, really bring it up, elevate it a bunch. And while doing that, we want to bring in some inclusive play elements and make the place more inclusive for everyone. All mobility, but also different age groups. We think about parents, think about other people that might be bringing children to the park. We are accomplishing an objective of the park master plan to incorporate some nature play elements into the manufactured play equipment, have a combination of elements there. We're also bringing in elements of the Willamette Valley, nature and flora and fauna of Willamette Valley, trying to make it a more like immersive experience, maybe some like interpretive elements in the playground, something for, make it more attractive again for everyone. Your parents as well as kids, caretakers, grandparents, kind of something there for everyone to enjoy. We're also identified that there are some conflicts with users in the paths around the playground. If you might think about like bicyclists going really fast and young children walking in very close proximity, we want to kind of divide users up and put some buffering and some space around them to reduce user conflicts. And lastly, we want to make sure we preserve those mature trees because those are a tremendous community asset. So we identified an opportunity to seek a grant from the state of Oregon, which I'll talk about in the next slide, to fund an expanded project, while also bringing in some park system development charges for the expanded park elements, the extra nature play elements. We are looking at a project cost of about 1.8 million. Of that, $600,000 is from the bond. It's one of the 10 playgrounds that received $6 million for replacement. We'll be, as I said, bringing in SDCs and then matching all that with a grant from the state. That's a little less than half of the project cost. The grant application was submitted on April 1st. There on the right, we did do some outreach to the neighborhood or to the community, just rapidly trying to get some support letters, and that's just something that was drawn up by a local elementary school student picked out. But we had a lot of great support letters. An excellent letter was written by the chair of SPRAD, and some really compelling arguments, I hope, to fund the project. Just where we are, the grant is being reviewed this month, but for a technical review process, it's a very complicated grant application. In May, there's an advisory board that the state Department of Parks and Recreation has established for this grant program. They're going to be reviewing the applications. They will then invite us to present our presentation, present our project to them in either June or July. We have about 5 minutes to just give a spiel about why they should fund it. And then in September or October, we should hear if we are successful with our application. It is a highly competitive program. However, one of the reasons we went after this grant this year is that it had a big influx in additional funding, kind of doubling the amount available from past years. Yeah, the grant program is funded with state lottery proceeds, and there was a trigger in the legislation for that it bumped up how much goes to parks. So we're trying to take advantage of that.
Do you need any support for that presentation from us? Is there something we can do to help?
Mayor, if you were interested, we could loop you into that.
I would love that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure.
They received 60 grant applications. The total ask was $37 million, and they have $34 million to hand out. So those are pretty good odds.
Yeah, that's actually amazing.
And just a little bit on what we're doing here is the Parks Master Plan. You probably can't read all that small writing at the bottom, but number 9 there is a slide mound. That's a new play element that's not there today. And then there's a call out for stone terraces / nature play as number 11. And so that's what I mean by we're carrying out some of the vision of the master plan there. And then just real quickly, I talked about rerouting paths. This is I just want to, you have a graphic in front of you that really gets into what we're doing in the playground, but we're going to create a new major park path to kind of detour one where we're going to close because we're expanding the playground to the north. Shown in this illustration also is an approved expansion of the carousel building. So you can kind of see how everything fits in there. And then the graphic in front of you, here it is again. Again, it's I'm just going to throw out a few of the accessibility features here. So this would be like a merry-go-round, number 19, that a wheelchair can go into. This is an accessible route that would go up to the 2nd level of a play structure, which is great. So then you think about kids in a wheelchair could use the slide. This is an orientation path. We're imagining pour-in-place fall material. So we can use different colors to highlight things, and that's an accessibility feature to have an orientation path. There's also little details like it's going to be fenced. This is really helpful for kids with autism, for example, to keep them contained in there. We're going to have a quiet zone and some sensory elements for kids who just need to take a break. One of my favorites is this idea of an eagle's nest area there. Then we have some nature play with the log climbers, which we're calling the Beaver Dam. We have
Rob,
some.
if it's the beaver dam, shouldn't, in fairness, that be a duck nest?
No.
And don't ducks build their nests on the ground.
No ducks there at all, none whatsoever. No.
I think we're trying to avoid that particular association, but a couple other things. I don't want to get in the middle of it personally.
We should probably be accommodating bear cats.
We have there's a lot of turtle habitat, native turtle habitat restoration going on in Minto, so we're with some turtles to climb on in here. One of my favorite, which is probably might be from a maintenance perspective, what we're going to have to really investigate is trampolines embedded into the playground, kind of like meat frogs.
What could possibly go wrong?
They exist in
Yeah,
other.
but how fun.
They exist in other public parks in Oregon, and so we're just kind of seeing what's going on there, and we'll check in a year or two, because this is slated to be delivered in 2026.
Hold up, I just love number 11. I just think that's like the hill to like roll down, and I love that you have kids on there that are rolling down it, which is great.
If you flip your graphic over, there's precedent imagery to kind of help you spur your imagination.
Yeah, and I just love how much like nature elements you're bringing in, like with the beaver dam being the best one. But the eagle's nest and the rock scramble, those are just fantastic. Really great, super creative. Really love it. What is the age group that you're getting? I mean, is it like, do you have things here for every single age group, and then like what's the top end? Yeah,
so traditionally we design for 2 to 12. Or if you look at precedent imagery, you're going to see one that's called intergenerational play.
Okay, good.
We're trying to create some play elements that I could use. That's the idea.
That's what I want to come do this.
Jay's gonna be rolling down.
I totally am. You know it.
Lastly, I was talking about next steps other than the presentations we're preparing for. We're doing some targeted outreach, and it's been really eye-opening for me. We're reaching out to families who have children who are not able to use our park system because of mobility or developmental disabilities, and we're going to continue to do that. We're trying to build a network of folks that we can use kind of the focus group moving forward. We are also going to reach out to the Rotary because the current playground is known as the Rotary's Children's Playground. 26 years ago, they donated money to the city for its development, and so we just want to check in with them and let them know what we're doing too. So those are kind of some of the activities we're doing right now. In the summer, we'll be getting more into the design of this project.
Are we gonna give them the opportunity to maintain their name? Through a nice
That would
donation?
be the idea, yes.
Yeah, perfect. Great. Anything else on Riverfront Playground Equipment Grant?
Is
Nice
that
job,
grant in, the application is in then already?
Yes, we
Okay, and
successfully
you
applied.
get to make a pitch, an oral pitch?
That's right. And after they've reviewed our application, they can ask us questions too.
Excellent.
Great.
We did that.
Good work.
Reviewing the applications in Salem.
Yeah,
That was great.
that's awesome. Okay, Aaron, Deer Park.
Yeah, just super quick updates. The skate park, which is not a bond project, but because it's in there, but I mention it. We are nearly executing contracts with the DPD contractor, Paul Brothers. They partnered up with Greenworks and
Evergreen
Skate Parks. So that's exciting, and I think that team will be fantastic. So
Great. Only tangentially related. We heard at the neighborhood meeting a few weeks ago, the Nesca neighborhood, that there's some real significant problems over in that area right now with trash and encampment trash. It's on state property.
there is on the other side.
Yeah, but I think, especially if we're gonna be doing construction over there, if there's anything that we can do to get that communication with the state going, to get them to clean up their property, I think that would be really good, especially as we're getting ready to do this really important work. So the neighborhood has tried and they've been unsuccessful. So I think if there's something we could do to push that conversation along, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that for sure. The other gear project is the bond improvement. That is a separate project, and we are also negotiating a contract with a COR contractor, Lingo Hansen. They're a landscape architect firm. So we're that's really all this for here.
Questions on gear? Okay. Civic Center, Aaron, you're still up.
Yeah. Also, I can be brief. I have signed contracts from the design build contractor in my inbox. Howard S. Wright teamed up with Hacker, as you may recall. They were the design build team for the library and also the public works building. So we're really excited to get started with them. I'll be sharing that contract with legal for review and getting it sent over for signature. So we have a kickoff meeting with the design build team next week. So more to come there.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Project Oversight, Josh and Brian. You want to take it, Brian?
Sure, I'm going to take it. So we were questioning whether we should have a separate oversight committee for the Civic Center or just keep it within this group. And so we kind of played around with, we're already having meetings here. Do we maybe pick one every couple months and just dedicate it towards the Civic Center and not have to have a second group that's meeting to talk about the Civic Center?
I thought you already had a group.
Well, that's an internal work group of,
What's the one that,
Linda's on.
what's the one that Shioka's on?
Yeah.
yeah,
Linda's
I
on
mean,
that one.
95% staff.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
okay.
think she's the only person.
Okay. We've always had a separate group, but this is a bond project, so maybe we want to treat it differently. Just have this be the oversight committee. That sounds good to me. One,
Less meetings is
One
always good.
right.
I agree.
Okay.
But if
Good luck for everybody.
Yes.
If
Let's
it
do that.
gets to be too much, we can.
We
change
can always
right?
split it off. We can separate, we can maybe make this group that committee and just have a separate meeting.
Yeah.
You know, something. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay. Anything else on that? That was easy.
Before we move on from that, just real quick, what's the status of the location we're going to?
Relocation effort?
Yeah.
Well, you'll learn more next week at our steering committee meeting. But not really a whole lot more to add. I mean, timing wise,
Is the location firm?
we don't have a firm location. That's, I guess, the first thing to say is we're still looking at locations. We have zeroed in on a location that seems to fit a lot of the needs. And we're gonna share, maybe get some recommendations from staff next week. First, as far as timing goes, we're still looking at, we'll know more once we have our kickoff meeting with the DB team, but we're still looking at probably moving out around March 2025 so that we can start the abatement of this building and then we'll be ready for construction. And then kind of the June timeframe.
Okay.
So,
My only request would be that Counselor Nishioka come to those quarterly meetings where we get updates, but only because she has been in all of those meetings and has the history of.
Well,
the
she's our
decisions.
alternate on this group, right? So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be my request.
Anything else?
Is she going to be replacing Counselor Stapleton on this committee?
Jeez, he already wants to get rid of me.
We've all been, everybody's been asking.
I know, they're like, when is
They're
she
like, when's
gone?
Virginia gone? Was that one of the proposals? I acted on those the other day, so yes.
But not
Just
yet.
discharging
I
her.
wanted to keep this one for a
Oh,
while.
was this one?
Oh,
Yeah. Sorry,
So
guys, you're stuck with me.
All right.
I don't think there's anything prohibiting her from participating, even though she's not.
Right, because there's only 3 of us.
Yep,
So she could just be joining.
Yeah, she can sit in.
that's true.
We can always ask Virginia to leave at any time.
So sad.
And I'll follow up with her, just let her know. about
Thanks.
this group's decision.
Anything else on that project? Okay. Local vendor report. Alan, it's back to you.
It is attached at the back of your agenda. Still looking good. We have our first contractor award on there to Knife River. That was the Minto project. And we will add on the next one, the R&R project, which was to Roy Hauk, who is a Salem firm. So that will keep our local percentage very healthy so far.
Okay. Questions about that? All right. Continued business. You said bond premium. Josh and Brian.
And we touched on this, so unless there's additional questions, I don't think we have to talk about it.
Any other questions on that? Any other business? The only answer, there's only one correct answer.
Nope.
Awesome, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.